I'm going to be showing you guys how I made my easy and delicious cheesy garlic bread at home, and it's so simple to make. For the ingredients, we're going to be using 1 3/4 cup of all-purpose flour, 3/4 teaspoon of instant yeast, a half a teaspoon of salt, and 3/4 cup of water. We're going to add our yeast to our flour, and we're also going to add our salt to the warm water. I'm gonna let that sit while I mix my yeast and flour together. And I'm just going to give that a mix, and then I'm going to give the water and the salt a mix to make sure that all the salt is dissolved. And if you need more salt, just sprinkle salt on top of your bread. But yeah, you don't want to oversalt your food. So yeah. So I'm going to gradually add in my water a little at a time to hydrate my flour. And you might need a little bit more water depending on how your dough is. Maybe about 2 tablespoons more of water. I added a little bit more water to my dough so that all the flour was hydrated. So yeah, just slowly add in your water, and if you need more, just slowly add it in, maybe about 2 tablespoons. So once my dough is hydrated, as you see here, I'm just going to mix it to make sure all the flour is hydrated. And once I do that, I'm just going to sprinkle some flour onto my surface, and I'm also going to sprinkle some flour onto the top of the dough because the dough was sticky. But when you start working the dough into the flour a little bit, then it becomes less stickier. And yeah, so I'm just going to work my dough a little bit, and you can see it becomes less stickier, and you could just work this dough without any flour eventually, because yeah. So I'm just gonna work my dough, and this dough is really soft. But like I said, if you guys want to double this recipe, you can. It'll make more bread, more delicious bread, and yeah. And look how soft this dough is, and it's so easy to work with. But I'm just going to get my glass bowl. I'm going to add a little bit of oil, and I'm going to put the oil all around the bowl so that the dough doesn't stick and it rises without sticking. So I'm just going to turn the dough in the oil until it's moisturized with the oil. And I'm just going to cover it with plastic wrap, and I'm going to let it sit in a warm place. Like, I set it inside of my oven, but my oven wasn't on. I just turned my oven on warm, and then I turned it off. I turned my oven on warm for about 3 minutes or 2. And yeah, I turned my oven off, and then I placed my dough in there, and I let it rise for about an hour or until it has doubled in size. So while my dough is rising, I'm going to put together my garlic butter sauce. I'm just going to add about 3 tablespoons of butter, 2 garlic cloves, and I didn't have any Italian seasoning, but this recipe calls for Italian seasoning. So I just put some Mexican oregano, some marjoram, and a little bit of garlic powder, and I set it to the side. once my dough was done rising, I uncovered it and I pulled the dough from the sides of the bowl, and as you can see here, the dough is super soft and very easy to work with, as you can see here. And so now I'm just going to bring over my pan that I will be using. I already greased my pan. You want to make sure you guys grease your pan, the bottom and the sides. You want to make sure your dough does not stick. And yes, this pan was too big for my dough, but I made it work. Like I said, you can double the recipe. I'm just going to stretch my dough, and then once I do that, I'm going to poke holes in my dough, but I'm not going to go all the way through and poke holes at the bottom. I'm just going to poke holes on the top lightly, making sure I do not poke the bottom of the dough. Next, I'm going to add my garlic butter onto my dough, and I'm going to cover my dough in this butter. And I left a little bit in the bowl to pour over top when it's done. And yeah, you just want to make sure your dough is covered with this butter. Next, I'm going to go in with my shredded mozzarella cheese. You guys can either get the block and shred it like I did, or you can get the mozzarella shredded, pre-shredded at the store, but I suggest you shred your own cheese. It's better. So I'm going to use this butter a little bit more to put some on the sides of the dough, and I'm going to, well, I already have my oven preheated to 450, and I'm going to bake this for 15 minutes. But if you double this recipe, you're probably going to have to bake it longer. And I'm going to add some color to my dough or to my bread. I'm just going to sprinkle over some parsley, and I'm going to let it bake for 15 minutes. After 15 minutes, this is how my bread looked. I'm going to let it cool off for about 10 minutes. And then I'm going to remove it from the pan, and I'm going to cut it into small pieces. And yeah, this bread was so delicious, and it was just so good. And you can add as much cheese as you want. The more cheese, the better. And it will be super cheesy. So I'm just going to cut my dough into the sizes that I want them to be. And this dough will have your house smelling so delicious. And it was super cheesy, soft, and fluffy. And it was so easy to make. Everyone will love this recipe. But yeah, after that, I'm just going to add the remaining of the garlic butter onto my garlic cheesy bread. And yeah, I hope you guys try this recipe. Don't forget to subscribe, follow me on Instagram. Adios.